You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
What's up, Coaches Nation? So excited to see you again for another episode of the Coach's Journey. I have been absent from this podcast for like 3 weeks, so it feels weird being back. I was on vacation a couple weeks, then last week I got taken down for a few days, not feeling good, so I'm back this week, excited to be co-hosting with Faisal and San. Yay! It's good to see you again.
You're back. We've missed you.
Thank you. So today we are going to have a really important topic around coaching, because any new coach, what's the biggest question that they typically have? What would you guess, Faisal?
You broke up a little bit. So what questions they typically have?
What's like the single biggest question that a newer coach has?
How am I going to market myself?
Yes,
how am I going to reach my clients?
Yes. How do I get clients? And how do we get clients? Well, little term called sales and marketing. Or I guess that's 2 terms. 3 if you use the and.
Yes.
So today we're going to talk about marketing, but we're going to come at it from a very simplistic perspective. I know that as I think about marketing, I think I know too much about marketing and I overcomplicate it. And then I get lost in all of the system potentials and all this sort of stuff. So we want to kind of clear away a lot of the stuff that you may not actually need to worry about right now and just focus on the marketing components and the marketing aspects as a newer coach that are actually going to be valuable to you right now. So you don't want to miss this session. This episode. It's going to be really, I think you're going to have a couple shifts. And I always have to say that word very intentionally because somehow whenever I say mindset shift, I end up swearing.
That is odd.
I know. So when I say mindset shift, I have to be very intentional. All right, Faisal, as always, let's start with some wins. What are some wins for you this week?
Wins for me. I think it's this. Yesterday I had 3 sales calls and none of them I know the outcome of. And I was sitting with my wife afterwards. I'm like, you know what? I really can't understand how difficult it can be for people. I mean, I started out around that. It was very difficult for me. But I mean, it's just being on this journey for 6 years. Sales is difficult and I think the hardest part of it is managing the emotional stuff around it, because you've done all this hard work to kind of put out content, reach out to people, set up these sessions, and then you go through these sessions, and then at the end you don't know the outcome, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what went right, what didn't go, what I can learn from this call, what the outcome is. You have no idea, and a lot of like entrepreneurship is like that. You're at it for a while, and at some point there's a payout. But the win for me is that I've been fairly calm about it, and I'm like, okay. This is how it's been. It's worked out for the past 6 years, and I'm accelerating the process, and I'm getting better at it. But it's just a matter of keep going and not letting like these kind of situations dictate the bigger picture. So for me, just developing that calmness around this stuff is I think a huge win, because I never had that. I would, as soon as I would have a sales call, nothing would happen. I would be like me going under a rock for 2 weeks and nobody would find me. But now I'm just back at it the next day, and it just is a normal part of my process.
Yeah, no, that is a huge win. So I congratulate you, Faisal, on that. I certainly have experienced, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs can probably raise their hand when I ask, do you sometimes see your business as you? It's like, you are your business is you are one with your business. And so if somebody makes a suggestion, hey, maybe you could do something different with this part of your business. And it might go, all of a sudden you take it personal, like they're telling you, that you are a horrible person, so it's really hard. And I think challenging, but important to separate. You are not your business. You created your business. But your identity, your value, your worth is not wholly your business. And so trying to keep them separate so that you can objectively think about how to make some improvements and that sort of thing, I think is critical to the longevity of business and to the growth and scaling and all of that. So it sounds like you've done some hard work on separating yourself from your business in that way.
Yeah, and I love what you said. So for me, it's not just business; it's every aspect of my life. I've been, and it goes externally and internally, which is a very deeper spiritual idea as well. Is that ultimately you are not your kids, you're not your partner, you're not your culture, you're not your religion, you're not any of that stuff. You need to be able to find yourself within all this. And as soon as you get confused, even confusing yourself with your thoughts and emotions can take you on this roller coaster in so many ways. But recognizing that all these are an aspect of you, these are an important part of your life, but essentially is not you. And who you are in that moment and who you are in your soul, that's really important to understand. Because as soon as you get that, then you're not attaching all these other roles and identities with it in a way that drives that. So for me, the effect has been being much more grounded versus being much more reactionary to almost everything that happens. Obviously, just like everybody else, there are times where I'm reactionary, but on a consistent basis, it has given me this sense of being grounded in my life versus being all over the place.
Awesome. Yay, that's a great feeling, and especially to recognize that you are growing in that way and not as reactive. It's got to be a good feeling. I think about it like the difference between being a ship that's unanchored in the middle of a storm, like it's going wherever the waves take it, versus being anchored. It still moves, it's still rocky, but it's not going to end up halfway across the world. It stays relatively close to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I love that.
So I would say I've had a lot of wins, but let me just use my not feeling good as a win. And so I think it was last Tuesday, I started to kind of feel weird. And last Wednesday morning when I woke up, ironically, the morning of our podcast, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I sounded like a 90-year-old man, like super deep voice. Like maybe I'd smoked, 2 packs of cigarettes for the last three decades. It was bad. And so, but what I did is I looked at my schedule and I'm like, I felt very fortunate because there was nothing on my schedule that I absolutely couldn't miss. At least I felt that way. So I called people, texted people, and I'm like, out of commission for a day, maybe 3. And I just stayed home and I took naps and I watched some TV with my kids and just totally took it easy. So it was really nice just to be able to have some downtime, even though it was, because I wasn't feeling 100%, but it was still nice having that downtime. And I was able to still do some work when I was feeling a little bit better, but I just didn't have the busyness of like everybody else being in my life. I was able to sorry, I'm not doing meetings and stuff like that. And so I was able to just kind of be quiet, have quiet time and downtime. So that was really good. So that
is a huge win, taking the time for yourself. By the way, those are my favorite times. Even though I'm sick, I knock out. So Sarah can't do that. My wife can't do that. First of all, she doesn't get sick as bad as that. So her immune system, I guess, is much better. We all got sick the past few weeks, but she's like, I wish I got sick because I'm always taking care of you guys.
Well, yeah, and like when I get sick, I kind of have that I don't care attitude. It's like I don't know. I just kind of noticed this last time. I'm like, I'm very particular about how my kids spend their time during the day. They have an hour to watch TV and that's it. And, but, it's kind of like that, you know what? I don't care. I don't care. And so, and I was able to follow that up with, if they watch more than a few hours of TV in a day, just for a couple days, it's not the end of the world, so it was kind of me coaching myself to be okay with, I don't care attitude for a couple days. And we have a couch out on our back porch. And so like I took a 2.5 hour nap there. I just propped some pillows up and just, while the cat and the chickens were out, and it was wonderful. So
cool. Cat and the chickens, do they get along?
They actually do. It's hilarious. My cat does not go after the chickens. He just lays and watches them. I think when we first brought him home, he was curious. And then one of the chickens tried to peck at him and he ran away. And so I think the chickens dominated him.
I used to have had a lot of experience. I used to have chickens and they were eaten by cats all the time. So we had to find different ways of getting them. But I have had so many experiences of chickens. I might have even tortured a cat when I was a kid, which I'm not proud of, but I was angry. And there was this cat kept eating my chicken. But later on, I had 2 cats. And then I found out love for cats too. I'm like, oh, they are pretty nuts, according to Joe Rogan community. He's like, if you love cats, you love serial killers because they torture their prey. You've ever watched a cat? It's like I watched one of my cats go after a bunny. The poor thing's guts are all over the place and the thing is playing with it. I'm like, ah!
Cats don't have a conscience like that.
Yeah, they don't operate that way.
No, they don't.
Joe Rogan was talking about vegans and cats. He's like, listen, if you're a vegan, you should not have cats because they don't fit in. They don't fit in the picture. They will torture their food.
All right, guys, as you're listening to this, sorry if we completely went off the rails and traumatized you with this conversation. Oh my goodness. All right.
We just lost a few vegans, vegetarians, and a few people who like cats.
Absolutely. Equal opportunity, right? All right. So marketing and a newer coach. What would you say, Faisal, is the most important mindset? Because we all know that our actions, our emotions, our behaviors actually come out of what we believe. So what would you say is one of the most important mindsets or beliefs to really adopt at the onset of being a coach and when you're thinking about marketing?
I think the way I look at marketing is just, I think there has to be an initial step of putting yourself out there. I think the belief that holds people back is this, I mean, at least coaches that, am I going to be able to add enough value, and that vulnerability of kind of putting yourself out there can be very scary for a lot of coaches, especially if they don't have, and that was true for me. Initially, I was scared to death to put myself out there. And but I knew, one thing I knew was that my mission, my vision was much bigger than that fear. Yeah. So I found different ways of kind of getting better at it. I had no speaking background. I had no background in communication, or I wasn't confident. I was very introverted. And then I had convinced myself that it was my introversion that stopped me from talking to people, which was a lie. But along the way, I think I found out was that, I mean, how big is your mission? How important is your vision? And I think that allows people to move ahead. But then I've also heard stories of coaches. I mean, we had one coach who talks about herself being an introvert, but she went about it a different way. She still put herself out there, but she didn't do it on video. She did it through her blogs, and she was fairly successful. So I think there are different mediums for marketing. It could be on social media, it could be in person, it could be all over the place, but I think it starts with those beliefs. I think as coaches, we understand dealing with the internal world is very important. It's like, okay, why am I not putting myself out there? What are the excuses that I keep coming up with over and over? And sometimes I've seen this, people have had the same thoughts for like 2 years, 3 years, and they haven't changed it.
Yeah.
And even though they know that that's what it is, they haven't developed the courage to move past it. And at some point, you either be honest with yourself and say that, oh, I don't want to go towards that path. And there are other ways of building your coaching business. Or say to yourself, okay, what would my way of marketing look like? Because marketing is not one way to do things. There are so many different ways. Like you were talking about, there are so many different systems and ways of approaching marketing that could potentially work. And it can be overwhelming at times. But I think the initial step is dealing with those beliefs of, am I going to be, first of all, I'm putting myself out there, and especially if you're a private person, that's not comfortable. And then the part of it is that, will I be able to add value? Will people pay me for what I'm doing? Or if you're looking at it from a business standpoint. So I feel like for me, that was those two primary things. And I've heard other coaches talk about this a lot, and that tends to be a big fear for them. And they approach it in different ways too. But you might have had a different experience around that.
I think my experience is similar. I would normalize, as you were talking, I was like thinking, I would actually be concerned if a newer coach wasn't thinking or didn't have some sort of concern about how they can add value to the world, or can I do this? How am I going to do this? Those are all really important questions. And if a newer coach is not thinking that way, I'd almost think that that's the problem. Not the problem isn't when you have those questions, because if you have those questions, instead of staying stuck in I'm trying to remember who said this. This might have been Brendan Burchard, but it was, and I don't remember if I read it or if I was at a workshop or something, but it was this idea when you have these questions of like, for example, if you're thinking to yourself, I have no idea how I'm going to be able to serve people. That is can be a very anxiety producing thought and question, but it's not really a question you're genuinely asking yourself. It's kind of like a statement within a question. So the challenge internally is, how do I take that anxiety provoking fake question and turn it into an actual question that gets you curious to find out the answer? And so taking that question from, I don't know how I'm going to, how am I ever going to provide enough value, to, how am I going to provide enough value? What's that going to look like? What do I need to do? What do I need to learn? How do I need to grow? Those are two very different internal experiences. And so when I heard somebody talk about that, taking those statements or anxiety questions that we have and turning them into a curiosity question, because our brain naturally wants to answer questions. And so if we ask ourselves a legit curiosity question, then it engages our brain to problem solve. And so, I think that a newer coach that's not thinking about those questions might be a little overconfident. They might lack a little bit of humility. I think there's a possibility of that, especially when you're in the newer stage, because you probably don't have a lot of experience to draw from. And so if you're coming into the space with all confidence and no experience, I think that's a dangerous place to be. That's kind of my opinion.
Yeah, yes, and I agree with that. A couple exceptions that I've seen, there are coaches who are new, but they have other skill sets. As for example, then there are a few coaches I met, they have marketing agencies. And like when you watch their growth, it just accelerates. So they know how to approach it initially, and they have a sales background. So they will jump into it, and they have answered those questions for themselves already because they've been part of that world. And coaches don't realize how much of coaching is marketing and sales. Yes. And so when they jump in, even though they don't have the initial experience around coaching per se, but for example, they will book a bunch of calls. And once you book a bunch of calls, you're getting the experience as you move forward, and then you're actually working with people. And I think that's, and what you shared there is really profound, because we make statements that creates anxiety, but we generally, because we're blocked, we don't ask questions that lead us somewhere. And as coaches, we should understand the power of questions. Is okay, I am stuck, I don't know any of this. what would be my next step. And for me initially, even though I knew some of the questions, I was circling around everywhere. And so maybe we can spend some time trying to figure out, okay, the first step is asking those questions. Okay, what do I need to move forward? What is the next step? Maybe we can talk about some of the blocks that coaches might have, and how what can help them move forward towards a place where they can market themselves as a coach. And some of those things, we're actually doing it in our community, Coaching Master community, which we forgot to mention as a sponsor of this podcast. Some of the things we're actually doing it in the community that helps coaches to kind of clarify their path and who they're reaching out to, and what they need to do to move forward in the marketing and sales path.
So I will point out, Faisal, maybe this is a little ego in me. When you said, I don't know if I entirely agree with that, Sherry, because we've got some marketing coaches that come into the space, already confident, but you kind of affirmed what I said though, because they've already done the work. Like they already know, they've already answered those questions. How am I going to provide value? And most of the coaches that, especially in the Coaching Mastery community, they're coming into coaching from a very different life experience. And they, a lot of times they haven't had those questions. They've kind of started that they've got some enthusiasm and some initial optimism that they can offer value somehow. Because if somebody had no belief that was possible, why would they ever get into coaching? Because that's a pretty scary transition to go from job to, being self-employed, no income, no clients, nothing, that's really scary. So there's definitely some optimism. And so then the question is, how does one as a coach, as a newer coach, and maybe even a seasoned coach, because as seasoned coaches, there's typically a constant evolution. Even with you, Faisal, you've done coaching a certain way for a period of time, and then you realize, well, there's another style, another level, another, way of constructing a community versus individual coaching. So it's not a static journey that you just, most people, I think, interestingly, a lot of people in coaching and an entrepreneurial journey in and of itself, they like change, they like growth. Like that's part of the entrepreneurial pull, is we have unlimited growth potential. Nobody gets to hold you back but yourself, which is good. Of course, it has its hard sides. But yeah, it's finding confidence, and maybe not unfounded confidence, but developing confidence of that impact that one can have in the world, however that ends up looking. So anyway, all of that to say that you kind of just affirmed what I said.
Yeah, no, I did. A big part of it, I agreed. And yes, they have done some of the work around that. And that's the part that's kind of hidden for coaches. For the longest time, I resisted marketing and business stuff, because I didn't necessarily get into business for the sake of business. I just wanted to do my own thing. I never looked at it. It's very odd. I never looked at it from a business point of view. And I had all sorts of resistance to business, to money, to all this stuff that's a huge part of my life. But the thing that was most important to me was I really enjoyed working with people. I just wanted to help people. And you will hear that from coaches over and over. A lot of them have that mindset. Like, I just want to work with people. I just want to support people. I just want to serve people. But they don't understand that they're building a business. At least a version of that. They don't necessarily have to build a business fully entrepreneurially, and then I want to explore that a little bit, because there are other options. Yep. But let's say you're on. So for me initially, but even though I didn't think of it from a business standpoint, there were certain things that I had that was very entrepreneurial in nature. I wanted to learn. I wanted to be on a growth journey. Like I wanted to grow. I didn't want any limits. I wanted to understand how I could create a bigger impact. And entrepreneurial path is one of those powerful paths that can lead you there. And then along the way, I realized, well, that's what I'm doing. I like this stuff, and I needed to deal with some of the blocks around that and move forward. So maybe we can, and there was this kind of, so there's Patrick Bet-David. He's an entrepreneur. He actually has a cool channel on YouTube, Valuetainment. And I've learned quite a bit from the past few months around business and other things. And one of the things he talked about two ideas. One is entrepreneur and entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur is somebody who builds the organization, who takes all the risk, who goes on this path to create all this stuff. Entrepreneur, similar, with the exception that he or she doesn't take that risk. So that person is part of somebody else's bigger vision. And they're both just as amazing, because a lot of times we think that, oh, everybody should be an entrepreneur. I don't think that's necessarily true. As I've thought about it, as I've talked to a lot of coaches, not everybody has that mindset or is ready for that kind of path. Oh, you're muted. Sure.
And honestly, if everybody was an entrepreneur, our economy would crash.
Yeah.
Like, it is completely unrealistic economically for everybody to be an entrepreneur. So as much as people are like, this is, sometimes people tout that being an entrepreneur is like the holy way. And it's like, it's like you're on this another level of plane of existence if you do that. And that's not the case, nor could it ever be the case. So completely agree with that. Some people shouldn't be and don't want to be, and that's okay.
And there's a moment of honesty, right? To recognize, because I mean, it's interesting, because when I look back, I didn't think of any of this stuff. But then as I look back, it's like maybe there were certain decisions I needed to make early on, like how do I want to approach this path? And initially I didn't understand a lot of the business and marketing and all this stuff. So I kind of jumped in and found my way the hard way. But as I look back, if you just ask yourself some questions, for example, Rich Liddman has this formula. It's like there are three types of coaches, and there's a full-time coach, there's a part-time coach, there's a coach that uses coaching in their own field. That field could be, they could be, I don't know, in HR, and they're doing partly coaching or something else in their company, or they're leading a team and they want to do coaching with their team. So they're using coaching as a tool. That's one way of looking at it. But even within full-time and part-time, you can actually look, because now coaching is fairly established in a lot of places. There are a lot of opportunities. There are people who are hiring coaches for their companies. So maybe you can also look at it from a standpoint of, I'll work for an organization who requires coaches. And that will be a different approach. So, and when I thought about it, it was like, imagine somebody who's working at a job, and instead of waking up every day looking for, like they're seeking a job, they're like, oh, I'm going to look for a job half the day. The other half the day, I'm going to build a business. But they're confused about which path they're going on. So their attention is divided. And maybe at some point they'll be ready and they want to be on the entrepreneurial journey. But at this point, what is the decision you've made? And we've had a coach within our community. She decided she just wants to work with other organizations. She doesn't want to do, actually we had a few coaches. She doesn't want to do all the work around the marketing and all this other stuff, which takes up a huge chunk of time. She just wants to show up, serve her clients, and go home. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's an honest conversation with ourselves or with somebody that we trust, our coach, community members, whoever it is, to have before you even kind of go towards that, because it determines where you're going to focus your efforts.
Absolutely. And, Faisal, you and I are very different in our coaching as well. You would be what I would consider the full-time coach. Everything that you're doing is coaching or building a coaching business and all these different things. And whereas for me, it's like my coaching fits into another industry and supports what I do. It adds an extra layer of value. But it's, I don't see myself, excuse me, I don't see myself coaching on a Zoom call, 20 hours a week. That's just, that doesn't fit the picture of what I'm moving towards. And so, you're kind of the picture of the full-time. I'm kind of the picture of sort of part-time, sort of like that third part, but it's within my own business. And then, then you've got the folks that are like, as you said, are I don't want a business. I'll be an independent contractor or plug into somebody else's business, which we have contract coaching with, even within CMC, where we have, as an organization, have contracted with some businesses, organizations. And so some of our coaches who've been with us for a while, they have an opportunity to plug in and get to experience being a coach, and they get paid, but they're not having to do all the marketing and that sort of stuff. So there really is so many different, unique opportunities. So if you're freaked out by marketing, or maybe just don't really want to do that, there are other opportunities. And maybe you'll be a contract coach as a step to build your confidence as a coach, which I know Faisal has talked about before, that you kind of did that for a while, and you,
Yeah, I did
that's
that
where you
for a while.
kind of cut your teeth. Yeah. So there's so many things that, so many opportunities. At the same time, sometimes so many opportunities can be overwhelming as like no opportunities. So it can go either way.
Yeah. So and yeah. So as soon as you make that decision, so let's say you make the decision to go towards, let's say, contract coaching, or you want to work with other people, or you want to collaborate and leverage their ability to market, you go that direction. And then let's say you want to be on that entrepreneurial journey. There's a powerful decision you need to make, and that's something that took me a while to make. I kept resisting it. That, oh, marketing is an option. It is not. That's like, if you look at a business, you will not be able to sustain business without marketing and sales. It just doesn't work. No matter how great the value is, no matter how great the product is or the service is, nobody knows about it. Nobody has seen the value of the product. It'll just sit there. You will just sit there hoping that clients will come to you. It just doesn't work.
It's like having a bank account where you don't have automatic paychecks, deposited in. If you don't have money coming in, guys, your budget's going to run dry and it's going to shrivel up, and the bank, you're going to overdraft, and the bank is going to tell you they got to shut your thing. I mean, you got to have an inflow to be able to have an outflow. So that's what marketing is. It's the inflow. It's the thing that keeps your work and your business healthy.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, your bank account is probably the most honest tool for you to figure out how you're doing in your coaching business. All you have to do is just go there and look at your cash flow. If you don't have a consistent cash flow system, then something is off on the marketing and sales.
Yeah.
And then that's just as honest as you can be with yourself. And that's why I think one of the best things that I've learned from business owners is that check your account every day. Look at it, because it is painful to look at it if you're not doing good, but it's encouraging to look at it when there is cash flow coming in. But either way, you can't avoid that. It's in front of you. It's data.
Is that one of your morning routines, Faisal? Do you get up, look at your bank account on your?
I do. It's very interesting because I never, when it, like, it's not like, I'm not the kind of person who's money hungry in the sense like, oh, I'm doing all this. Even though I like money, I want there to be money because it gives me a lot of options. It gives me a lot of possibilities. But now I look at it pretty much every day, and I'll review it. And I'm even trying to set up a system where I look at all these stuff every morning to see it basically is checking in with the health of your business.
Yeah.
I look at it that way, similar to how you would check in with your own health and well-being every morning. And money is one of the major metrics by which you're going to determine your business. It doesn't determine your worth, it determines your business's worth very clearly.
Yeah. Which is a very important distinction. Going back to the very beginning of this podcast, you are not your business. They're two separate things. So I think that's, so I had asked you at the kind of towards the beginning, Faisal, like what's the important mindset as a beginner coach? And for me, it was shifting out of this belief or this fear that I can't provide value for somebody or for people. Like, if I would have conversations and they would say no, then I'm like, well, screw it. I don't have anything to offer. I'm just never going to work. Or shifting out of that mindset to the mindset of I am on the hunt for the people that need or want what I have to offer. So rather than me trying to figure out how I can be the be all end all for them, it's figuring out what do I have to offer and then finding the people that match that. It's a very interesting shift. And sometimes I still don't feel like I've fully shifted out of the one into the other. It's easy to fall back into that. Just like kind of you said that, if you have a sales call and it doesn't go well, crawl under a rock for 2 weeks, lick your wounds. And then at some point, that was like a cat move. We're back to cats.
Been around too many cats.
Lick your wounds. And then at some point kind of reemerge tentatively, twice bitten, once bitten, twice shy kind of thing.
Is it weird that when you say hunt, I picture you with a spear and with these tattoos on hunting for them?
That is weird.
I as soon as you said that, that's the picture that came to me.
That's funny. We'll have to process that a little bit later. Just kidding. Now I have no idea what I was saying. But just the mindset shift out of, I said that right. Mindset shift out of how am I going to change myself to meet other people versus finding the people that can get value out of my experiences and kind of how I do things.
So here, let me give you a perspective from my life. So by the way, that's a very normal thing. Every coach will experience that, because when you're starting something, you don't actually, how do you know what is the value of your coaching? You know it by getting the feedback from the other side. Like obviously you're going to get it by, okay, you went into a certification, they told you all these other people are making money, they're building a business, they're building a life, they're creating an impact. Like those are it gives you confidence to kind of take the next step. But how do you really know that your coaching is worth anything? Well, you put it out, which is scary, and you see feedback. And how do you receive feedback? You receive feedback through referrals, through getting paid, through consistently getting clients, and that gives you feedback. And so it's like the chicken and the egg thing. We want to understand what the value of our coaching is, but we haven't put it out there yet. But that's very normal, because you haven't actually put yourself out there. You haven't put your product or service out there for you to test it out. And usually the value is determined by the market, not by you or by your thoughts or by whatever you provide. And almost always you're going to have to make adjustments and evolve, like Dr. Sherry said, and grow with your business. And that's, I think that's the part that's very exciting in the entrepreneurial journey. And when you listen to business owners and who have been very successful, they consistently seek that. In fact, they get too bored when their business is fully established and everything is running automatically. Guess what they do? They jump onto a new project.
Absolutely.
Because that growth part is so exciting, understanding. But once you go through that, then it stops being so scary for your psychology. Yeah. So your system reacts to it, because obviously you don't want them to feel rejected. You don't want, there are all sorts of thoughts around, oh, what if I become a laughing stock? What if this? What if that? What if the other? But once you put it out there, the value will be determined by the market. And that's the essential rule of the business, is that market determines whether or not your services or products are of any value. And you're going to have to pivot with that and adjust with that as you move forward.
And sometimes it's not just if the market isn't responding, it's because your value is not there. Sometimes it's because you're not communicating your value in a way that is landing or making sense. And so there is some differentiation that can, I think that's useful. It's hard to differentiate. Is it just because what I have to offer is it needed or wanted? Or is it because I am, it's hard sometimes to communicate the value of the intangible.
Yeah.
Not everybody sees the value of internal work. So how do you have those conversations?
So that's where you get better, right? That's where the adjustments and pivots come in, is that it challenges you. So it's not like a binary thing. You put your coaching out there, nobody wants it. And, that's it. That's not what I'm trying to communicate. What I'm saying is when you put your product out there, you will face a lot of challenges in terms of, like you said, how do I communicate something like that? How do I communicate the value? How do I show the value? How do I consistently get better referrals? How do I create a system for lead generation? All this stuff will come into the picture, and you have to consistently pivot with it and learn from the process. And it's the challenge of, will you be able to do that? And will you be able to adapt and pivot? And that's what determines a successful entrepreneur from one who isn't, because somebody who will be successful, they will pivot and adjust to quote unquote failures that they will have. But that's a common thing that's in the business world. So, and I loved what you said there, is that finding your target market. So for example, initially when I started out, I was hounding anybody who would take coaching from my family members. And I still remember there was this time, I was this family member, literally, I was like, pay me anything. And because I really knew that I could help her in certain areas. And I'm like, it doesn't matter to me. Pay me anything. I just don't want to do this for free. It was just something. I did a few sessions with her. She was paying me like $50 a month. I'm like, okay, that's for her more to have the what do you call it, the buy-in into the process. But she stopped for all sorts of reasons. She got overwhelmed. She wasn't ready, and I picked the wrong client to begin with. Now, compare that to me getting paid $1,000 per session. That's a huge, huge difference. Now, if I go back to some of my family members, they still won't see the value. But my clients do. They understand the value. That's why they're paying it. Because the growth that they're getting is worth the investment for them. And that's a huge thing. There was this video somebody posted on YouTube. There was this, I'm pretty sure that was real. So it was this violin player who was at a subway station. It was a very famous violin player.
I saw that same Facebook post.
Violin. It was really powerful. He plays it, and people are barely giving him change. Some people are just stopping, looking like, this is incredible, at the subway. And then the next day he goes and he does a concert with, I don't know, hundreds of people and making a lot of money. And then the post read is like something along the lines of, find the place where you will be valued.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's the comment of like, a prophet is never, I'm going to butcher it, but a prophet isn't recognized in their hometown. And I don't know if that goes back to the biblical, but anyway, there's that idea that, sometimes the people that know you the most, like, they're the ones kind of stuck and like, how could that, they may not be able to see the growth or they're not the right fit. I experienced that in my hometown, quite frankly. I live in a smaller, it's about probably 70,000 or so. And there's just not a significant mindset of high performance. And, and so when I've tried to get some traction in what I have to offer locally, it just doesn't go anywhere. Whether it was free, whether it was paid, and so I have a marketing friend who coaches me, and he made the most profound, he didn't realize it was probably as profound as it was, but I was like crying. I'm like, why isn't this working? And he just simply said, Sherry, you're marketing to the wrong audience. And I was like, is it that simple? And so that statement that he told me completely changed my perspective. I'm like, oh, okay. It's not, I need to find the people that have the mindset that I am trying to cultivate myself, who can get excited about that journey, who's excited about what I'm excited about. And so, so if you can have somebody in your life that can speak that into, give you that reassurance, give you that external perspective, that is invaluable, which ties into the Coaching Mastery community, because that is all of what we do, is we provide that perspective. Our members, the leaders, we're here to encourage, support, and your spouse may not be the person. I know my spouse hasn't been the person that's like, Sherry, you're an amazing coach. Just keep on keeping on. What you have is valuable. Like, he doesn't fully understand what I do either. And so, he's a very pragmatic, like, are you making money? If you're not making money, maybe you shouldn't do that,
You gotta clip this out, send it to JP.
Yeah, I'm sure there's another coach listening to this that'd be like, yep, that's what my spouse has said, or that's what my family members have said. They may not be your biggest cheerleaders in that way, and that's okay. If you need them to be, but they are not, that's a hard place to be in. So find that community, find those people, probably are their coaches, because they're really going to be able to understand with compassion and empathy where you are, and they're going to be able to speak to some of your fears, some of your challenges, some of your struggles in a much more precise way than just kind of the general random person that doesn't understand.
Yeah, I love that, and that's why, I mean, the concept of community becomes important, because even if it's not a negative thing sometimes that your family doesn't understand what you do because they haven't gone through the process. They don't know what it is. They don't have your passion around it, and they will do their best to support you. Yeah. But the kind of support that you need is actually from the people who are doing this. And this is actually why, like, if you watch business owners, they're always around other business owners, because they understand they're always in masterminds. They're always in these places that help them generate ideas, deal with their blocks, to do all this stuff to help them move forward in their business. If they were always around other people who didn't understand what they did, then they would feel just as disconnected, just as confused, just as vague about their path. But because they're around the right people, they're constantly supported to move forward. And then that's why I think it's important, much more important than having like a process or a funnel to do your marketing, is to have people around you that are consistently giving you feedback on what you're trying. Even if that is as simple as, let me reach out to 100 people that I know in my network. That could be your marketing. And maybe the next conversation, what we can do is go to the specifics of, well, where do you start? How do you find the right people? What do you need to think about to find the right people? And how do you consistently market to a certain niche that you might have to go towards? And that might be the next conversation that we can go through, so we can go through some of the technical parts of this, aside from the mindset that we went through today. What do you think, Sherry?
I think that sounds fantabulous.
I love that word, fantabulous.
We'll leave the podcast here on a little bit of a high note, with a new made up word. Yeah, I love that. So definitely check out our community. We have opened it up, our Facebook group, to other coaches. It is free. You will be vetted. So Sherry will be hunting for the right coaches there with her spear. Whatever your answer, it will be taken into account for you to come into our community. We do have a very close-knit community where we support each other like a family, where we learn from each other, where we grow together. And within the Facebook group, we actually broadcast one of our sessions live every week for you to learn about coaching mastery and business mastery. So definitely join us there. The link will be underneath this video for our Facebook group. And aside from that, like this post or this video wherever you are watching or listening to this, and share it with a coach that you might know who will benefit from these thoughts. Yeah, guys, and I cannot stress enough how valuable of an opportunity it is for you guys to be part of the Coaching Mastery Community Facebook group for free, because you have access to a whole group of other coaches who are doing a broad range of things that maybe are part-time, full-time, contracts. They're trying to figure out their way in the world, their contribution. And so they're on their growth journey. We're on our growth journey. We're all trying to grow together. And you get an hour of really in-depth diving deep into different coaching and business topics every week. You can watch it live in the group, or you can, we leave it up so you can go back and watch. but such valuable conversations. And all of that is for free. Like, we just want to make sure that you guys feel supported and loved and encouraged, so you don't give up on what you believe deep down is your ability to have a positive impact in the world. So, Coaching Mastery Community Group, search for it and ask to be a member, and we'll let you in within a couple of days. We kind of check it every couple of days.
After the.
All right, enough of the spear.
Can't get it out of my head.
All right, guys, thank you so much for your time and attention and energy today. We greatly appreciate it. And I hope you guys have an amazing week, and we'll see you and catch you again next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey Podcast.